All right, welcome to this explainer. Think of this as your high stakes executive briefing. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the strict regulatory frameworks that govern the financial world, and we're going to translate them into a clear, actionable blueprint for corporate resilience. We are unpacking exactly what it takes to govern risk at the absolute highest levels of an organization. So let's jump right in. Could your organization survive a catastrophic, low probability crisis? I mean, really think about it for a second. I'm not talking about a minor dip in your quarterly earnings. I'm talking about a sudden, completely unpredictable shock to the entire system. Is your institution truly prepared? Because let's face it, hoping for the best, that's not a strategy. True preparation requires a rigorous, top-down governance structure. To unpack all of that, we're going to cover 6 key areas today. We'll start with the historical need for stress tests, then look at the board's mandate, management's execution role, the specific risk toolkit, the vital lines of defense in policies and audits, and finally, how to build future-ready boards. Okay, Section 1, the need for stress tests, and specifically, what we learned from the 2007 and 2008 financial crisis. Post-crisis analysis revealed a pretty fatal flaw. Just running tests simply isn't enough. Back then, many firms were technically doing some form of stress testing, but it was basically siloed. It was insufficiently integrated into their actual day-to-day risk management practices. The few firms that actually were committed to it, well, they didn't look at scenarios that were anywhere near severe enough. And honestly, worse than that, the results had little to no impact on actual decision-making. The crisis proved, without a doubt, that if severe scenarios aren't hardwired into the core strategy of a business, disaster absolutely follows. Moving on to Section 2, the Board of Directors mandate. This is all about ultimate accountability. There is this powerful, undeniable concept at the core of all corporate governance, and it's this: the buck stops with the board. Ultimately, the Board of Directors is on the hook for a firm's stress tests. Now, even if the board members aren't the ones down in the technical weeds, running the complex mathematical models themselves, they still own the firm's risk appetite. They are required to have continuous involvement. They need to regularly receive summary information and ensure those results actually align with the firm's overall strategy. At the end of the day, they make the final calls on investment, capital, and liquidity based on these very tests. And the legal reality of that mandate? It's strict. According to statutory regulations, like the Companies Act or the SEBI listing regulations, the board is legally mandated to ensure that systems of risk management are robust and defensible. They have to satisfy themselves on the integrity of the financial information, and they literally lay out the exact procedures for risk assessment. This isn't just a suggestion, it is a completely non-negotiable governance requirement. Which brings us to Section 3, Senior Management's Execution Role, bridging that gap between strategy and implementation. So, while the board handles the continuous review and sets the high-level risk appetite, senior management, they provide the boots-on-the-ground implementation oversight. Management takes the board's strategic guidelines and implements them to the letter. They are the ones responsible for propagating this knowledge across all the different departments, hunting down inconsistencies or those tricky gray areas in the tests, and crucially, updating the stress tests to reflect new emerging risks as the institution gains new market exposures. All right, Section 4, the Risk Management Toolkit. Let's look at the 3 pillars of analysis. First up, we have scenario analysis. This involves analyzing changes across a really wide range of variables. The whole point here is to be dynamic and forward-looking. You can't just look at historical data, right? Because only looking backward completely neglects recent developments and your current vulnerabilities. Instead, you have to combine that historical data with hypothetical, forward-looking scenarios that actually align with the board's long-term strategy. This is how you capture those expected higher probability risks across the board. Next in the toolkit is stress testing. Now, unlike scenario analysis, here you're altering a very limited number of variables, often just 1 or 2, to assess extreme external shocks. We are talking about high-impact, low-probability events. Think an economic recession, a massive geopolitical fallout like Brexit, or, a global pandemic. These are the severe, out-of-left-field events that seriously threaten your normal operations. And finally, we have reverse stress testing. The crucial twist here is that you actually start at the end. You identify the exact point of non-viability, basically the maximum financial loss your organization can withstand before it goes bankrupt, and then you work backward to figure out what internal risk event could possibly cause it. Let me challenge you right now. Do you know the specific internal event, maybe a massive IT failure or a devastating internal fraud, that would literally bankrupt your firm? That is exactly what reverse stress testing forces you to figure out. Moving to Section 5, Policies, Documentation, and Audit. These are your essential lines of defense. Listen, rigorous documentation is completely non-negotiable. Why? Well, it allows management to spot risk trends over time, and it promotes transparency for third parties. But honestly, perhaps the most important reason is that it ensures continuity during management changes. Think about it. If your chief risk officer leaves tomorrow, comprehensive documentation ensures the new leadership can easily learn the ropes without the firm losing its defensive posture. Plus, just the act of writing it all down forces your developers to think really clearly about their methods and assumptions, which naturally improves the whole process. But beyond just documentation, you need a highly skilled internal audit team that follows a strict life cycle. And I mean a team that doesn't just check boxes. They need to independently evaluate the performance and the true integrity of these tests. They check that approved policy changes are actually being implemented on the ground, and they assess the skills and expertise of the staff running the tests. Your auditors literally have to be highly qualified and super well-grounded in complex modeling just to differentiate between what's a good practice and what's wildly inappropriate. Finally, Section 6, Building Future-Ready Boards and Integrating Emerging Practices. A fantastic resource for navigating this adaptation is the Board Handbook. Its 4th edition was actually unveiled at the recent TriStar IoD National Convention, down in Chennai on July 25, 2026. This is a landmark publication, and it serves as a really essential reference guide for directors, CXOs, and policymakers who are trying to navigate what is becoming an increasingly complex governance landscape. So what exactly does that complex landscape look like today? Well, the handbook summarizes the modern board's expanded purview perfectly. You see, it's no longer just about financial risk. A future-ready board absolutely must focus on leadership, strategic oversight, and critically, ESG, environmental, social, and governance factors. These are no longer side topics. They are vital, integrated parts of your overall corporate risk blueprint. The modern board simply has to be prepared for a much wider array of emerging boardroom practices. And that leads me to a crucial question that I want to leave you with today. Is your governance framework truly ready for the next unknown risk? We've walked through the blueprint, from the board's ultimate mandate, straight down to management's execution, through that rigorous testing toolkit, all backed by strict documentation and audits. So I urge you, take this blueprint back to your own boardroom. Ask the really tough questions, test the extreme scenarios, and make sure your organization is actually built to survive. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.